Welcome to another episode of Wolt Tech Talks podcast. My name is Jerry, and today I will be interviewing Ibbad, who's our on-call competence lead. We will be discussing, for example, the most memorable incidents that we have had. As an example, we have been DDoSing ourselves quite many times. And then we will discuss how the on-call has evolved during the years, where it started and where we are heading. But let's start with short introductions. So Ibbad, would you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I am Ibbad. I joined Wolt a couple of years ago, and I originally joined as a backend developer in the consumer group, which is responsible for managing the backend services, which power up our mobile apps, our web, and other consumer-related features. For the last 1.5 years, I have been in the on-call team at Wolt. And for last more than 1 year, I am competence lead for the on-call at Wolt. Yeah.
Great. Could you maybe open up what does it mean to be the competence lead of on-call?
So the competence lead role covers the whole on-call and the incident management area. The things I'm primarily responsible for is managing the on-call team at Wolt. We have a global on-call team, which consists of engineers from different groups at Wolt. The competence lead is responsible for making sure that we have excellence in the on-call and incident management process, responsible for keeping the documentation and the onboarding guides up to date, giving introduction to other new engineers in the group, and any kind of plans to improve the on-call processes in general.
Great, thanks. We have been growing during the I don't know how many years, but maybe if we go back to the beginning, could you share when we started on-call and maybe what was the size back then? And let's move on from there towards current time.
Yeah, so on-call started rather early in the Wolt's history because we need to understand a bit of a background on why on-call was more needed in Wolt compared to any, like, for example, e-commerce site in general. Because in Wolt, when somebody orders food, they're hungry, they want to eat. And if for some reason it fails, like we cannot bring them food, it's a bit more troublesome compared to if you are trying to open a site and it doesn't load and you have to refresh a couple of times. So that brings a bit of more criticality to the operations we run. So in the beginning, we were a group of small team, a few engineers, maybe less than 20 or so many, and we were developing at a breakneck speed. We are still developing at the same speed. So why we needed on-call was that once the development speed is high, there might be some issues that creep into our production systems, and we cannot afford our production systems to be down for a long time. So in the early days, the senior engineers who were working on the product from the very beginning, they joined together as a team who was responsible for taking care of putting out the fires, I would say. They had some primitive form of rotation where one person was on call for 1 week or several days a week, and they were primarily responsible for the first responder for any incidents we have. And once there is an incident, then all the relevant people will jump in, and then they are responsible for resolving the situation.
And jumping today, how is it different nowadays, and what's the difference in scale?
Yeah, so nowadays we run maybe order of magnitude higher number of services. The last I remember, there were around 400 services we are running now. So it's a bit different because previously, initially the people who were part of on-call group, they knew inside out of the whole system because they built the Wolt from the ground up. But now we don't expect the on-call engineers to be like they have information about all the systems. So they are still the first responders, but now we rely more on the development teams themselves to help us resolve any critical issues we have. Good thing is that we don't have so many critical issues now, and we have built a lot of resilience in our systems. We have improved things substantially over the last couple of years to make sure that we scale as we get more people on the platform, as we deliver more orders, things like this.
So how does it work in practice at the moment? How many on-call engineers we have, and how many are on duty at certain time of the week and such?
So as I mentioned, the global on-call team at Wolt consists of engineers from different groups, and those are voluntary engineers. How the process works is if somebody is interested in joining the on-call team, we onboard them, and they become part of the people who are responsible for on-call. At any point in time, we have one engineer company-wide as the global on-call person, and he's the first responder. So all the alerts and all the issues from the operations side, from the technical side, they come to that person, and then based on the initial investigation, they then ping the relevant teams or relevant people from other groups who develop that service to start working on resolution of the issue. There are different kinds of issues we have. We have divided that into different levels of severity. So the response depends on how severe the issues is. If it's a tier 0 issue, which is affecting operations, or tier 1 issue, which is impacting more than one services, then the response is much quicker. We work outside work hours to resolve the situation as soon as possible. But if this is something which can be addressed on the next business day, then we take the relevant actions accordingly. Then there is this point of communications. On-call is also responsible for communicating the technical information to people comms team or support comms team, who make company-wide announcements about what are the issues and at what stage are we in resolving those issues. Because we have a big team of operations. We have people taking care of customer support, courier support, merchant support. Then we have country teams who are working with merchants in the countries. And as I mentioned earlier, if people are not getting food, it's a big problem. So we want to communicate transparently about any issues we have, and want to resolve them as soon as possible, and keep our merchants, keep our customers up to date about those. How soon are we going to fix those? So on-call is also responsible for handling those kind of communications together with our comms teams.
Great. You mentioned that this is a bunch of volunteers, but I assume you get some sort of compensation out of this as well. So
yes, certainly. So since on-call is pretty intensive, we work in 2 shifts per week. So 5 working day or 4 working days from Monday to Friday as one shift, and the weekend shift, which starts on Friday morning and ends at Monday morning. So the on-call engineers are available 24/7 during those shifts in case of any issues of any form. So we want to compensate them accordingly. And for that, we have a very sound compensation framework, which we have made sure that it's higher than the industry standards to show a token of appreciation to these hardworking engineers we have in the on-call team.
Going from on-call engineers who pretty much know the full system inside out to some hundreds of services. So how do these on-call engineers nowadays, how do they know who to contact when there's an alert, and how do they get these alerts in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great point. So there are different questions in this one, so I'll tackle them one by one. So first of all, how do they get alerts? We have different systems for alerting. So we use Datadog in our observability stack. Then we have Grafana. We use Prometheus for scraping the metrics. And then we have some custom alerts built in our platform, like the application. So all these alerts are divided into different categories, as I mentioned. So some alerts may be very severe, like maybe our operations going down, or we cannot make the deliveries, or the users cannot open the app. And some of them are a bit of lesser critical in nature. For example, if we are doing some backfilling and that process is slow, it's taking some time, it's something which we look at, but it doesn't need the same level of urgency in resolution as we have for the critical events. So these events are consolidated from different services to our Slack. We use Slack primarily for all the incident management. And then we have PagerDuty for the notifications. So the on-call engineers get PagerDuty alerts from about any critical issues we have. And from there on, they start the investigation. Once there is an alert, then we try to find the relevant documentation for that. This is a big, this is a very important problem when you are trying to scale on-call to the level we have. As I mentioned previously, we only had like 10, 20, or 30 services, but now we have around 400 services. So it's not easy, or it's not even possible to ensure that one person knows about all these services. So we try to manage that overhead by having good documentation in place and good alerting in place. Recently, we have been putting a lot of efforts into making sure that only the critical alerts are the ones which come to the on-call person. And every critical alert should have enough information about the causes, the effects, and the directly responsible individuals who are working with that. And also some playbook for investigation. So ideally, an alert comes, on-call gets some investigation steps for that. If this is a problem, they can resolve by their own, given the set of instructions, it happens. Otherwise, if it is something critical, then we contact the directly responsible individual. And any work outside office hours for those individuals is also compensated as the same rate. We don't have the regular per team on call, as you might see in some other places. The system has been working for us currently, but we are in the place where we are trying to evolve and trying to make this a bit more formal, how we work with the development teams in outside working hours to resolve any incidents.
Awesome. I think that's a good bridge to talk about the future a bit.
Yeah.
So at the moment, if I understood correctly, there's basically one on-call engineer on duty, and then some hundreds of services, hopefully good documentation for each, or each alert related to those individual services. But yeah, you shortly touched what's the direction for the future. So could you open up that a bit more?
Yeah. So as we grow and we are developing new services at a very fast pace. We are hiring many people every single week. We are onboarding them to work on the new product features we have coming. And that brings a bit of an issue in ensuring that the documentation is updated, ensuring that the ownership is clear, because as we onboard more teams, the ownership may change compared to before. So how we want to move ahead with that, ensuring that the quality of on-call doesn't go down, or our time to respond to any alerts or time to mitigate any issues stays low as we want. We are exploring the possibility of having multiple tiers of on-call. What that means in practice is that in the organization, we have different groups working on different parts of the product, and then we have different teams in those groups. And each team may be responsible for one or more services. Depending on how critical those services are, we are introducing the like on-call at the group or the subgroup level. But the whole framework depends on the criticality of services in each group. So, for example, consumer group has some critical services, so we might want to have more on-call engineers focusing on that area. Courier is also one of the areas we want to focus more on. moving on to retail and fintech and these kind of things. So in future, we want to have a system where we have in multiple on-call engineers, possibly one from each of those groups, who are more hands-on with the areas they are working on, and who can immediately resolve issues at a much faster pace compared to global on-call team, who needs a bit more of onboarding from the teams. Then, as I mentioned, onboarding, we are planning to start this practice where the new development teams, they onboard on-call engineers with about the new features they develop. It includes having playbooks for their alerts, having some business case summary of what the service does, what the impacts are, the disaster recovery instructions. So this initiative is going really well. We are seeing a lot of involvement from different teams who are making sure that we have this documentation, which helps on call try to resolve things as soon as possible.
I think it's really fascinating that we have managed basically with very similar setup from the early days up until now.
Yeah.
I believe there must have been some pain points on the way. Could you maybe share some of those and how we have tackled them on the way?
Yeah, the biggest pain point I would say is the pain of growth. In the last couple of years, we grew at exponential rate. We onboarded several hundreds of engineers. We developed several new services, new teams, and each service is operating at maybe tens of times higher scale compared to what it was doing in 2019. And while this is a happy problem, it did bring us quite some strain on how we run the on-call process and how we collaborate with the teams, development teams, and how the whole alerting flows. Because with new services and with new engineers being onboarded, we need to make sure that we keep the noise in our alerts to minimal. Because if there is more noise in the alerts, it causes fatigue for the on-call engineer, and we cannot ensure the same quality of service we expect from the on-call team. So that was, I think, the biggest pain point, which we have resolved to a big extent, in my opinion. Then we initially, like in a couple of years ago, or in say 2019, before COVID, we had this runaway for our services. So even if we get slightly higher loads, we had this breathing room for our services to scale, and we could react to it in some time. But as COVID came, this had huge impact on our business, and we practically exhausted our runaways. So for the last couple of years, we are trying to play catch up with our those runaways, that breathing room. We are consistently working on how we can ensure that our service is scaled to the new peaks we see every year, several times. We have huge, like big events like Valentine's Day, like New Year's, and several others during the year where we expect substantially higher user load on our services. We want to make sure that we stay up during that time. We deliver the products at a very fast pace to our customers. We make sure that our couriers and customers have the best experience. For that, we have done a lot of things. We have added a bunch of resilience to our platform side. We have improved our database systems. We have improved our deployments. We have added reliability metrics to our deployments. We have had application side fail-safe mechanisms and circuit breakers and all those things that could help us handle any errors in a graceful manner. Then another thing which we encountered during this time is the 24/7 operations in some markets, because previously we had markets mostly in Europe, but now we have markets in Japan. So we need to make sure that our services are up and running all the time. And that gives us very little time for maintenance and these kind of operations. So we have to optimize that as well. The on-call has a wider time series to take care of the operations or keep an eye on all the systems. So this is one of the pain points we encountered, and we are trying to like improve how we address those.
How about, like, obviously the overall system has matured a while, it has scaled up as well, but are we measuring, let's say, incidents or on-call related practices somehow? For example, have we been, is it linear, the number of services for the considering the times we are down, for example, or there's some sort of incident, or how does it go?
Yeah, so to talk about measurement and if the scale was linear with the number of services, we have to go back a little and see like what kind of services we run. So we have a lot of microservices responsible for individual areas, and lately we have been focusing more on developing these microservices. But we still have two big monoliths, which were where the Wolt started from. One of them is the consumer-facing service, which is Restaurant API, the famous service we have, and the other one is the route mill service, which is responsible for courier side operations. So when we had these two services, there was much bigger blast radius. So any problem with this service impacted a lot of things. But as we move to the microservices or smaller services part, the situation has improved significantly, because now if one service goes down in isolation, it doesn't affect other services. We have circuit breakers in place, we have fail-safe defaults in place, we have retries and like limits on every service and between service to service communication, so that one service doesn't impact all other services around it. So that has helped us keeping the number of incidents lower than what we had before. It helps us scale the individual services based on need, and it helps us resolve the problems in isolation, clear areas of ownership for each of those services. So that has improved the situation much more. About the question of how we measure it, for every on-call shift, we use shift reports where the outgoing on-call engineer gives a summary of all the incidents that have happened, which incidents required any response or immediate action, which incidents were resolved by themselves. That helps us identify any noise or anything we can improve to reduce the alert fatigue for on-call. And then it also tells us about the warnings, which didn't become an issue, but would be something good to already start working on improving the situation. So this kind of report gives us a summary on how many incidents we saw in each shift. That gives us, like, helps us keep a trend of how reliable have we been, and how noisy the on-call shift was, or how busy the on-call shift was. In addition to that, for any even non-major incidents, but anything which lasted for a significant amount of time and didn't resolve within like 5 minutes, we try to have postmortems for that. In postmortems, we do root cause analysis. We involve multiple teams who are working with that service, and we try to identify not only the cause of immediate issue, but we try to look for any side effects which it might have brought, which were missing from our observability, to make sure that we know best about what are the incidents we get. And in addition to that, we have company-wide metrics also on how reliable the platform has been, how many orders we delivered without any troubles. We have some good company-wide goals on that, and we try to keep following those and making sure our systems are reliable.
Could you share what are the most common incident types nowadays?
Okay, so there are two parts of it. This information. So one is the alerts we get, and then one is the incidents we have. So there might be an alert which would not translate into an incident. So I'll try to answer it in two parts. Most of the alerts we get are about slight elevation in latencies or error rates or some loads on our platform. For example, if you are running a backfill, our DB may be slightly overloaded, so we want to look into that, see if there is a problem. And sometimes this alert lasts for so long that it becomes an incident, so it starts impacting the users. Lately, the most common we are getting has been the DDoSing against our web client, Wolt.com. We have seen a lot of efforts, really big efforts, in bringing the Wolt client, our web client down. But luckily, we have some amazing engineers working in that team. And it happened only once when it impacted our operations. And after that, we built enough resilience in our at several levels, on the client side, on the platform side, on the ingress side, to make sure that it doesn't affect us in the same way. And I'm happy to share that it's been going well. We still get these DDoS attacks, but we can manage them a bit better, and we are continuously working on that. Other than that, the most common issues we get these days are some bad code, some unoptimal code released to production. We have good testing in place. We have good staging environments to test our code before pushing it to production. And then we have a quality assurance team who is helping us, making sure that anything that goes to production is reliable. But when we are operating at a scale which Wolt works at, there can be some problems which are only visible in production. So there might be some incident where we release some new code to production. It doesn't work as expected, so we mostly roll it back pretty quickly. We have good alerting in place, so we know about those issues. Then our ops team is amazing. They bring us great feedback very quickly about any issues on the technical side. To make sure that this pushing suboptimal code to production is not very common, while ensuring that we make continuous releases and in small batches to production. We try to have rollback mechanism documented for every new service we create, so that as soon as there is a problem, it can be rolled back immediately instead of it affecting customers in production for a long time. And besides that, we have some issues in elevated latencies at times because of unexpected load on the database and these kind of things. But this is pretty much it. Sometimes we have issues with our third-party services. We use plenty of third-party services for our payment operations, for our fintech operations, and also for several other things in our system. So we keep an eye on those systems. We try to make sure that as soon as the service quality goes down, we are notified, and we do something about that. So we guard every external communication with circuit breakers, with feature flags, and all those things.
Has there been any cases where we have informed the third party that, hey, your system is not behaving well, and that would be news for them, so that we would be their monitoring stack?
There have been some cases. Since we operate in so many markets, it is possible that the third-party service is not operating at the same level in a particular market compared to the others. So we have external communication channels with all those external parties, and we try to bring any information for them as soon as possible, because it is valuable for them as well, as they might be impacted by the same problem and have not noticed it yet.
All right. I think one of the interesting points that I mentioned in the introduction was the most memorable incidents. So could you maybe pick one or two incidents from the past which were memorable for you as an on-call engineer?
Okay. So we have plenty of memorable incidents. I would say every incident is memorable because we have a lot of learnings from those incidents. So one of my most favorite ones happened actually before I joined Wolt. It was related to a downtime, actually. So what happened exactly was we had some issues with our production system. So we were down for some time, and we closed deliveries. So downtime means closing deliveries for us. So we close deliveries for some time, and we have a good downtime communication process where we send apologies to all the customers that were impacted. We send out communications to all the couriers, make sure that they are compensated for any problems we had with the system, which affected their work. So in that one, we sent out mass apology email to the customers that sorry for the downtime. We had a few services with our system, and it triggered a lot of traffic for our system because everyone who got the email, they opened Wolt from that link, and for browsing or for ordering something, and that brought in a huge spike of load to our system, and that caused our services to melt down. So that was a very good learning experience for us as well, because from there we learned that whenever we are sending this mass communications, we should be mindful on the effects it will have from the user side, because it will nudge them, or it will they will click the link in the email and they will jump on the platform, or they'll open the app from the notification and things like this. So we'll get a bunch of a huge spike in traffic. But I'm happy that this hasn't happened in a while for us, because we improved the process of how we send out these communications. Now we do it in batches, market-wise, and also we send out the different user groups, like for example, for a particular geographic area in one, limited by the number of users, and then do it in a rolling manner instead of sending out mass email to everyone at once. So that was a particularly good one. Then we had some big incidents where Wolt was down for quite some time, like our operations were closed for some time. For that, one of, I think, the most notable in the recent history was St. Valentine's Day 2021, where I think the operations were closed for more than an hour. The root cause for that was we had huge traffic volumes on the Valentine's Day, and that caused one of our primary databases to go down under immense load. And that's the problem of having that big monolith in the first place. Like, we had this big monolith, it was responsible for all the operations, the primary database had overloaded, and then the problem started spreading across all our systems, the consumer-facing systems. Our salary queues were impacted, our Elasticsearch was impacted, and all those things. So that was a big, I would say, huge learning experience for us. We went very deep into root cause analysis of that incident. And that has opened up so many topics of improving the reliability of the system. It brought in the support from leadership on working on scaling the system up. It brought the motivation to break down that monolith into microservices responsible for individual areas. We did a lot of improvements on the platform side, on the alerting side, on the scalability side, on the application side. We introduced circuit breakers. We introduced DB timeouts. We introduced limits on the DB queries. We introduced rate limits on the endpoints. We did a lot of things. And that effort has shown that after that, we handled much bigger loads on New Year's Day, Valentine's Day 2022, and several other high scalability events we get to throughout the year. And we have been growing to, I think, 2-folds every year probably. So it's going, all the efforts are being paid. So downtimes are bad, but I like them for the learning experiences they bring to us to make sure our platforms are resilient enough. And in Wolt, we have this motivation or this mantra that we don't want to go down for the same thing twice. And I think we have been able to keep that up until now. We haven't gone down for the same problem more than once.
Great, thank you for sharing the stories.
Yeah.
this has been very insightful for me and hopefully for the listeners as well. Would you have any closing tips for companies or teams that are maybe at the early phases and they're considering to start building their on-call practices or some SRE in general?
So the first and foremost suggestion would be to look at the use case you have before setting up the on-call. We have these SRE books and the blog posts about how we should run on call and what should we do. Like, should it be a team specific on call? Should be a general on call company wide, which is responsible for everything? Should be a dedicated team handling this, or it should be a bunch of engineers who are working on the product handling this? So what I would suggest is to study your own case. There isn't a one size fits all rule here, in my opinion. Choose what works best for you, and also choose what you want to achieve from that. Like, do you want some eyes on any issue, or do you want to minimize the time to mitigate for any issues you have? What is the scale of systems we are talking about? How much investment you want to put into that, and all those things. So you can look at the solutions for inspiration, but I would suggest tuning the solution for your own case. For example, having one engineer Wolt wide is something which comes as a surprise to many people I talk to, because the scale and the number of on-call people, it just doesn't match. But it has been working for us due to goodwill. We have senior engineers in the company who jump into any issue at any time and help us resolve that. They are the sources of information for us, and they are really hands-on in resolving the situation. But now we have, as I mentioned, we have seen some pain points in that process, and we are trying to improve that continuously. And that brings me to the next point, that it's a continuous process. There isn't like you implement a solution and that's going to work. As you grow, as you move forward, as you have more people in the company, you have more services, different diversity of users, your business may change, and that will affect your own how you run your systems, what kind of reliability you need. So always take a look at the business, always iterate through the process, check the things you did well, look at the things which didn't work out well, and have this continuous feedback process from internal engineers as well, like how easy it is for them to work with the on-call team, how quick is it to resolve the problems. Find a metric which works the best for you. Do you want to optimize the time to mitigate, or do you want to optimize the time to the well-being of the on-call? How many critical alerts you want to react to? What kind of alert is critical for you? Like how fast you should react to something. Know what you are monitoring, the business side as well as the technical side, because eventually for example, in case of Wolt, our goal is to deliver food or deliver anything basically to our customers as soon as possible. So we want to make sure that those business metrics are also taken care of by our services. For that, something that has worked really well for us is the documentation part. Always document in clear and precise steps. We don't need more verbose documentation may not be something which you need. Instead, you need some clear steps on investigating and resolving a problem. Because when there is a fire going on, we don't want to read through 300 pages of documentation. We want to read through a single page playbook into knowing what we are looking at, knowing what kind of impact it has, and knowing how to resolve that or what to do about this, because we have to move fast in case we have an issue. And last but not the least, always take the people into account, your on-call team. If they have alert fatigue, if they are overworked, if you have a lot of alerts going on all the time, you might want to take a look into how you can improve the situation. Reinforce the team with more people, ensure that on-call people are well compensated, they are well rested, ensure that people are taking time out to rest. Like, for example, we, in addition to the monetary payment, we also try to convince people to take the free days off, make sure that they get the energy back, and use their time to learn the things they want to that work the best for them. So these kind of things. It's good to have good processes about incident response and escalation. So when to contact the teams about any production issues, when to engage external help outside working hours. If these processes are documented or well known throughout the company, then it makes it much easier to work together with all the teams without overworking anyone. So that's also a good thing. But yeah, so these are a few suggestions. One should always consider the thing they want to optimize and then work for that.
Thank you, Ibbad. I believe there were many valuable points also for companies that already have on-call, not only the ones that might be considering starting that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the interview and have a nice day.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.